Señores, por favor, a tomar asiento. Vamos a seguir con nuestra patita. Le doy las gracias a todos los que siguen acá con nosotros, porque ha estado intenso el día. Hemos estado desde las 9 de la mañana. Algunos están todo el día, algunos se dieron el plato, algunos ya se fueron para el trabajo, algunos se fueron a carretear, no sé qué, pero les agradezco a todos los que siguen acá. Webprendedor siempre ha sido esto, ha sido un evento súper para inspirar, para motivar, para que la gente se lance. Y además tratar de bajar un poco más a tierra los conceptos que hemos ido viendo, especialmente con los talleres que hacemos todos los años. ¿Alguien ha participado en los talleres de Webprendedor? Que levante la mano. Me no tanta gente en esta sala, así que les recomiendo que mañana se vayan a los talleres porque van a estar súper entretenidos, son diferentes temáticas y vamos a profundizar mucho lo que hemos hablado todo el rato acá. Elizabeth es una muy buena amiga, somos classmates en 500 Startups y les voy a pedir una sola disculpa. Este Webprendedor estuvo complicado, Leo, porque estuvimos haciendo muchas cosas, se nos cayeron unos speakers, el Nescafé es muy rico como venue, pero tiene muchas restricciones. Una de las cosas que no pudimos hacer este año es poner casetas de transmisión de traducción porque no hay espacio y los traductores necesitan ver la boca del speaker para poder traducir. Por lo tanto, lamentablemente, en este evento no tenemos traducción simultánea como el año pasado, pero sí vamos a tener traducción simultánea mañana en su taller. Entonces, la gente que quiera profundizar más la idea, porque mañana va a ser un taller, un workshop de 1 hora y media, los invito a participar, los que queden prendidos con la cuestión, porque ahí vamos a tener traducción simultánea para los que no hablan inglés. Ahora yo sé que todos entendemos un poco y todo, así que va a estar bien. So, Elizabeth, thank you very much for being here. Elizabeth is part of 500 Startups, just like me. We were classmates for like 5 months, and we were talking about the idea and, making the product better, and we were like, working hard until very late. So, thank you very much for being here. The audience is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Nico. Thank you. Lo siento, no hablo español, but I'm sorry, tomorrow will be better. So my name is Elizabeth Yin, and I'm the CEO and a co-founder of LaunchBit, which is an ad network for email newsletters. And I'll talk more about what we do later. But today, I'm going to talk about how you can start to build out your business idea without doing any programming. So how many of you are starting an internet company right now? Okay, a fair number of people. Great. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I come from the Silicon Valley. I grew up during the dot-com boom in the Silicon Valley, and it was a very exciting time. In fact, when I was in high school, my best friend and I decided that we would start an internet company together when we grew up. And today, my best friend Jennifer is my co-founder. But it wasn't always like this. I actually had a failed company before LaunchBit, and it was with a different co-founder. And it failed because nobody wanted our product. And I realized when I teamed up with Jennifer that it's very, very hard to know what product to build. It's very hard to know what people need or want. So when Jennifer and I decided to start a company together, I said, let's not just focus on one idea. Let's try lots of different ideas to see what will really stick. And so we spent a long time trying lots of different ideas. Our first website was a social shopping site for wedding apparel. Our next website was a social shopping site for dresses, et cetera, et cetera. We had lots and lots of websites that did not make it before we decided to do LaunchBit. And so what I realized was things were different from when we were growing up and now. In the 1990s, it was actually really easy to market your website. There were very few websites on the internet, and so you got a lot of attention. But it was difficult to build a website. There were no books or few books. There were no websites like Stack Overflow to help you out. But today, the problem is the opposite. Today, there are lots of resources on how to build a website. There are lots of tools that will do it for you, but there are so many websites, it's hard to get attention, And it's hard to know what people want. And so I found that, in starting a company today, the biggest obstacle really is, well, do you have a product that people want? And so that's what this talk really is focused on. How many of you are familiar with the lean startup methodology? Okay, a few people. So the lean startup methodology basically talks about how in the very beginning of starting a company, you should find something called product market fit. Product market fit is where you build a product that is perfect for a particular use case, a particular need, and it's a good fit for a very specific market. When you have that right fit, then you focus on scaling up your business. But if you don't find that fit, you should keep on exploring until you find it. And I'll talk about that more later. And so in some sense, the lean startup model is a lot like playing poker. Like when you play poker, you look at your hand and you have limited information, and if it looks like it's going well, then you bet some more, but you would never go all in without seeing your cards. And so this talk is all about how do you find product market fit without coding. So what I found as someone who's had a failed startup is that it is extremely tempting to want to just think, oh my gosh, my idea is so awesome. I'm just going to go and build it, and then everybody will use it. But having done that, I can tell you that people don't just come and flock to your product. It actually takes a lot of work, and then you may realize, like I did, that you've actually built out a lot of something that nobody really wanted. So when Jennifer and I teamed up, we did it the opposite. We didn't build at all at first for any of our ideas. We really wanted to make sure that we were solving a particular problem with whatever we decided to build. So at the very beginning of any idea, we would always do research. And this may sound so simple, but the reality is that very few people actually do this. Like, we would go out and talk to strangers of our particular target demographic that we wanted to reach. Now, this may sound really obvious, but most people, when they're starting their company, they'll just, maybe they'll talk with their mom or their best friend about their idea. But very few people will cold call or cold email random people. But that's precisely what you need to do. And tomorrow, I'm having a workshop that goes into more detail about how specifically to do these things. And these slides will be posted later. But in the interest of time, I'll kind of move along. If you, again, I'll talk more about this later, but we found that also if you're building a consumer site, Craigslist is an incredibly useful resource for finding random people who fit your demographic. And there's a woman named Cindy Alvarez, who is a product manager at now Yammer, no longer Kissmetrics, who has great advice on how to use Craigslist effectively to get to these people. And again, these slides will be posted later. And then, in addition to going out to reach your target demographic, we'll also try to bring people in before building out our product. So we may create a launch rock page, which is just one landing page with a description of what our product would do, and get people to sign up by running ads to this or telling people in forums about our product to drive people into us, so that way we can reach out and talk to these people as well. So the beginning stages is really all about finding people of your target demographic and just talking with them about their problems. Not even about your solution, but about their problems, and then figuring out whether there's a solution that might actually solve their problems. Dropbox did this really well. When you think about Dropbox, it's very complicated. It has to sync with all your different devices, and it's not an easy problem to do. And so when they were first starting, they weren't sure if this was something that was worth building, because it took them a really long time to build Dropbox. I think the first iteration took them almost a year. And so in deciding whether to do this, they said, well, what if we could measure the demand? How many people really want this? So they put up a simple video, and they had a sign up, and over 200,000 people signed up, and that's how they decided that they were going to build out their product. And so once you figure out from doing this kind of research by talking with lots and lots of people in your target demographic The next thing that we'll do is we'll build a prototype, or something called a minimum viable product. And a minimum viable product really is a bare bones product that just does one or maybe two things. There are no bells and whistles, no extra features. The test for whether you have built too much or not is if you can explain what your product does in one sentence. And there are plenty of ways to build out a minimum viable product without doing any coding at all. Like, there are all these free website builders that can help you get some form functionality or whatnot. Weebly, Yola, Google Sites, those are all great resources for just putting together a quick web page with some basic functionality without doing any coding. So I'm going to dive into a few specific examples of what I mean by a very, very basic minimum viable product. So how many of you have heard of a company called Aardvark? Okay, so like one person. So Aardvark was a real-time social search. So what that meant was, if I wanted to know what's the best restaurant in Santiago, I would instant message Aardvark on, say, Gtalk, asking what's the best restaurant in Santiago. And then Aardvark would have these crazy algorithms that would look through my friends and their friends and then forward my message to the person who would most likely know the answer to that. And then that person would receive an IM, an instant message from Aardvark, that would ask what is the best restaurant in Santiago, and that person would then instant message back, and then Aardvark would forward that instant message back to me. And so you can imagine there are so many complications in this system. First of all, Aardvark had to support so many instant messaging systems, you know, GChat, Yahoo Chat, Facebook Chat, all the major chat engines. And then they had to come up with some complex algorithm to figure out who in my friends may know and that kind of thing. And so, but the problem is the team was not, they were confident they could build this, but they were not sure whether people would use it. And they didn't want to build it before they knew that people would use it, so what they did was they pretended to be Aardvark. They would sit at a computer as Aardvark, and whenever you would instant message Aardvark, they would copy and paste your question, and I am one of their friends, the question, get the answer back, copy and paste it back. And they had people running Aardvark for many months before realizing there was a lot of demand for this, and they decided to then start building the technology. And nobody knew that there was no algorithms behind it and that it was somebody actually sitting there and doing all this work, all this manual work. And Aardvark eventually got acquired by Google, I think, for $50 million or something like that. Similarly, with my company LaunchBit, we also wanted to know, is there demand before building our product? So what we are is, we're an ad network for email newsletters. So what that means is, if you write an email newsletter, we can help you make money from your newsletter by putting ads in your newsletter. And so what we wanted to know was, were there newsletters who wanted this? Did they feel like they were making enough money? And we also wanted to know whether there were advertisers who would pay for this and would feel like they were able to get sales from their ads. And so in the beginning, we built no technology. We didn't build anything. We approached 6 email newsletter publishers and asked them if we could place ads in their newsletters. And then we approached 2 advertisers and asked them if they wanted to advertise with us. And both parties agreed, and we just manually copied and pasted the ads in their newsletters. And both sides really liked this, and that's where we got started. Today, we have a lot more complications in our system. We have a bidding, auction-based system. We have fraud detection. We have a platform to place your ad in automatically. We have targeting. There are all kinds of things that we've built out. But in the beginning, it was extremely simple. Like, do publishers and advertisers want this? To prove it, let's prove it manually first. The last example that I have of a minimum viable product is another product that my co-founder Jennifer and I had tried. And we ultimately decided not to pursue this idea, but a couple of years ago, we wanted to test out an idea that we called the Wed Connect. The Wed Connect was a website that would help brides find the right wedding vendors for their wedding. So for example, like a caterer, or a baker for their cake, or for a hairdresser for their hair. And all it was a simple web page that said what we were doing and had these form fields where you could fill out the details of your wedding. This is exactly what it looked like. And you might think there were fancy algorithms in the back that would help those brides like find the right vendors for their wedding, but in fact, actually, the page went nowhere. When you submitted it, it said thanks and we'll get back to you by email. And then Jennifer and I would manually look for vendors, wedding vendors in the particular bride's area, and manually email each bride. And I'll come back to that example later. Now the problem is, doing this all manually is a lot of work. For the first few people, your first few beta users is no big deal, but when you start to get to 50, 100, hundreds of beta users, it gets to be a lot of manual work. And so what we would do, and what Aardvark did, was employ people either from Odesk or Amazon Mechanical Turk. I've never used Crowdflower, but they do something similar. And it's basically people you can hire on a contract basis to do a particular task. And sometimes it can be really cheap. So like, for example, with the Wed Connect, we hired people on Amazon Mechanical Turk to find these wedding vendors for, I think, maybe like 2 cents or 3 cents. So I'm going to come back to the Wed Connect later, but after you kind of have an idea of how you're going to test your idea, the question is, how do you get the word out there? Like, all right, Aardvark has the right setup to manually do their testing, and we have our form for the Wed Connect, but how do you get people to even try it out? And that's where early stage marketing comes in. Now the key here is that early stage marketing at this point is not about getting hockey stick growth. It is not about trying to grow your business at all. It is just about trying to get feedback to make sure that your product is on the right track. So there are a few ways that you can get people immediately. The first is ads. Ads actually work really well for this purpose. They may not be a part of your longer term growth, but in terms of getting people to your site today, to test out your idea today, ads can help you a lot with that. So you have the usual candidates. You have Google AdWords. Yahoo and Bing has an ad platform. Facebook as well has an ad platform. And of course, my company, LaunchBit, I'll give it a free plug, also can help you get people to your site immediately. But if you don't want to pay for ads, or if you want to also get other traffic besides people from ads, you can also hang out in question and answer forums that can help you build rapport with people in your particular demographic. You can go to different community marketing channels such as Google Groups or Craigslist, or there are lots of Facebook fan pages. Finding the right demographic is really important, but then building rapport with these people can help you build relationships in the long run to also get feedback. So now that you have a few people come to your site, it could be tens of people, it could be hundreds of people, these people will get you feedback. The question is, how do you measure it? So there are lots of ways to measure feedback, and Google Analytics is very well known. And I would say that Google Analytics, though, comes in at a much later stage when you have many more people using your product and your product is more fully baked. The most important thing at this stage is to get qualitative feedback, like, are people using your product? Are they happy with your product? How often are they using your product? And what are they saying about your product when you ask them questions about it? Does it seem like it's solving their problem? And there are a lot of good qualitative analytics tools that can help with this. Here are a few right here: user testing, Clicktail. Those help you more with user experience issues. But Qualaroo, which used to be called Kiss Insights, is actually very helpful for getting to particular issues around, like, does this meet a need? Does your product solve an actual problem? And in fact, a lot of a lot of the startup communities will say that you know when you found product market fit when you're able to ask the question, how disappointed would you be if this product no longer existed? And if at least 40% say that they would be very disappointed, then you have product market fit. Now, obviously, this is just a rule of thumb. You know, maybe you have product market fit at 30% or maybe at 50%, but you want enough people saying that they would be really disappointed if your product were to disappear. And when you have product market fit, that's when you know that you're ready to scale up. But until then, it's about changing the way your product is and being able to make sure that you're fitting a need and tweaking that until you get to this. So I want to go back to the Web Connect, which was our example of a minimum viable product. So what we did was, you saw that form. We drove lots of traffic to that page. Not a lot, but enough to get some results. So we hung out in Yahoo Answers in the weddings section and answered lots of weddings questions and dropped our link to try to get people to come to our page. And we also took out ads on Google AdWords. And overall, the general traffic led to 21 signups. Now, this is not statistically significant, but it starts to give you a sense of whether people are interested in your product and whether this would actually work out as a viable business. In terms of the actual math, we did realize that actually this could work out as a viable business, and I'm not going into the details of that, but when we were doing this manually, when we were emailing brides the results of what they submitted, we found that pretty much nobody ever responded. In other words, the quality of the brides who were submitting were just not that interested in our product. And so we decided not to go forward with the Web Connect. We just couldn't gauge qualitative interest. And so the Web Connect was not the right business for us. But we learned a lot without doing any coding and without spending very much time on this at all. Like, the name of the game is to go as quickly as possible because everyone in this room only has so much runway. You only have so much time to work on your startup before you have to go bust. So with the Web Connect, we were able to test this idea in about a week. The first day, we did interviews with potential brides. The second day, we put together that web page that you saw with the form. And for 5 days after that, we spent a lot of time hanging out in wedding forums and running our ads for brides. And then in the last day, we analyzed the situation and decided that we did not want to go forward. If we had decided we wanted to go forward or continue with this, we probably would have, tweaked the product more because, like I said, we were not getting any engagement. None of the brides were responding to go forward with any of the wedding vendors that we chose. But we decided not to, and so after just that 1 week, we decided that this was too frustrating for us, and we decided to move on to our next idea. So that's my approach, or my co-founder and my approach to starting a business. This is why we went through so many different business ideas before getting to LaunchBit. And really, like I said before, we took a poker-like approach. We started each idea by interviewing our potential customers, finding out if there was a real problem there, and then pulling together a landing page and driving traffic to get more people to talk with, and then building a minimum viable product that was very manual, that we would operate ourselves without any coding. And based on that feedback, we would decide whether or not to continue. And so there were lots of ideas that we bet on a little bit initially, but ended up folding. With LaunchBit, we decided to bet and keep betting, and while we're still betting on that idea, for LaunchBit, we've raised $1 million. We have a whole boatload of customers and lots of revenue, and it's been about a little over a year now since we started that. So that pretty much concludes my talk. I know that this was very brief and a very high-level overview. If you want to dive into some specifics around how we tactically did some of these things, Jennifer and I actually put together an online guide with all of these specific steps that we did for these different ideas. And you can find it at guide.launchbit.com. We usually sell it for $50 US, but if you type in Chile 2012 in the How Did You Learn About Us box, then you'll get it for free. And if you are testing out an idea and you want to run ads, I can also give you a 15% off discount at launchbit.com. Nico, I don't know if you thought this was an ad. But in any event, I always love talking with entrepreneurs, so if you have any other questions, feel free to email us at hello@launchbit.com. Thank you.
Leo, si quieres, te conectas por mientras. ¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta? ¿Micrófono? Puedo tratar de traducirla, si tu inglés no es tan bueno. ¿Inglés? Perfecto, genial. ¿Micrófono? Dame un segundo. Es que no, porque la idea es que salga por streaming. Nos está viendo harta gente por internet, entonces, para que sea... One second, we have a question for you. The mic is going there. Okay.
Hi. So my question has to do a little bit with early adopters, in the sense that here in Chile, it's even harder to find early adopters. Our business, the one that we're trying to create, is focused on a global market, but finding an early adopter here in Chile is even harder if we are targeting the outside. So what's your suggestion to do that in some way?
That's a really great question. So if you are not tied to the local area, then I actually think it's really easy to find people from anywhere in the world these days. When we've done our customer development, on any of these forums where we would hang out, or Craigslist even, like I would actually go, like for example with Craigslist, I would go into different communities. Like even though we're based in the Bay Area, like I would post things for New York or anywhere else in the world. I've talked with people on Skype to do customer development interviews before. Like when I've posted stuff to some Google groups, like I remember talking with somebody from Sweden, from Israel, like different places, because these days it's so easy to talk with anybody from around the world. Everybody has Skype. And if your problem applies globally, then I don't think that's a problem at all.
Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Bueno, chicos, entonces los dejo invitados al taller. Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for coming here. You were the only green guy with us today, so thank you very, very, very much.